this is what Willie and I discussed as it pertains to Paris Johnson Jr. and his ability and how he's grown from what he was as a 15-year-old to now being a top 10 pick.
Well, when I first met him, he was playing defensive lineman. And so he had no clue how to play offensive line. So that's kind of why he always called himself the worst offensive lineman ever. But he wasn't the worst. It's just he had no clue on the fundamentals of playing offensive line. He was a 6'7" skinny kid. He came to Atlanta for a week to stay with me. And in that week, he tried to get everything he could out of me as far as offensive line play out of my mind into his mind. I always say Paris at 15 years old was probably the most obsessed 15-year-old I've ever seen as far as wanting to get better as a football player. And he wasn't living down here training with me on the regular in Atlanta, so our training was more virtual after he left Atlanta. And periodically, I would come to Cincinnati. He would come down here and work with us. But he had to have the obsession to carry it on for phone calls and Zoom calls and different things, FaceTime. And the kid was very obsessed, and he's still the same way right now, and it's carried on to college football.
So it's pretty clear that his work ethic is top notch if he's willing to do all of that stuff, especially remotely.
Absolutely. I think that kind of helped him too during COVID, because they couldn't get to their coaches and they couldn't get to their training. And if you know Paris' mom, Monica, she found a shed for him to work out in during COVID. When he came home, when all the college guys had to come home, his mom found a shed for him to work out in. He was training every day by himself. And the kid is just he's self-motivated. And anytime you look at any great players in the NFL or NBA or whatever sport, the great players are self-motivated. And that's PJ.
So how have you seen him improve from the moment that you walked in the door with him to him now being a top 10 prospect?
A lot of young guys don't study the game of football like that. Like you talk to a lot of young kids today, high school kids or college guys, they rarely watch a lot of football. But Paris is a student of the game. He loves to study the game. He keeps notes. I mean, the guy had a notebook for the combine and how he would go about talking to scouts and talking to every team. And he had a plan about he wanted to wear a collared shirt to every meeting he met with the coaches on. And he said, I said, why are you doing that? He said, because I know every other player is going to probably wear a T-shirt. I want to wear a collared shirt and seem business-like. So that's him, man. Like, he's always been a student. You know, he's a great individual, classroom student. But once he gets on the football field, man, he turns to a monster. And he has the ability to click a switch on and turn personality into a very aggressive, dominating football player.
So that was Willie Anderson, who's been training Paris Johnson Jr., talking about what it's like to work with that young man.
Interesting stuff. And it also reminds us that on a lot of teams when, this is something that Dave Wanstedt was talking about when I heard him discussing Orlando Brown and the money that he got and the trepidation that he said he would have. He said, when you are a left tackle, you're supposed to be a mainstay, that you're a team leader, you are a building block mainstay of an organization. And when someone like that is on his third team, he said, why? Why is it? He's that good, or you're paying that kind of money. Why is somebody like that moving? And you start thinking about left tackles, and they don't all necessarily have to be Hall of Fame level, but the guys who play a long time and end up with being the graybeards and what they mean to teams. That's what that sounds like to me. Whether it's Andrew Whitworth or Joe Thomas or these left tackles who are just rocks, who just are there every single year, every game, doing their job. And if you're scouting, if you think he can be one of those are special. And you tend to take them for granted when you have them.
I really do like the idea of this is, and one of the other things that Paris is that was said about Paris by Willie to me was, no one grows up wanting to be an offensive lineman. And he said that when he was playing on the defensive side, there's still room for him to grow, as a player. But the physical stuff is right there. And I like the flip a switch thing, where if you've seen interviews with Paris Johnson Jr., he seems like a fun dude, interesting guy, but he's got some of that nasty once the games start. And we were talking about it in the newsroom yesterday. if you're CJ Stroud, look at the number of times that he was actually under pressure last year. It's very low. The offensive line that he had, and Paris Johnson was a big part of that, he was almost never touched. You're able to operate in a way offensively that makes it easier for you to do what you need to do. That wasn't the only thing that I talked with Willie about, though. Because offensive line, I love talking with him because it's a part of the game that I don't think anyone who doesn't coach it or played it really understands. Like, we're doing our best.
Kind of a secret society.
Yeah, like we're doing our best to try and figure it out, and that's why we have smart people on the air that can help us out with that. I asked him about Justin Fields and what it would be like to play with Justin Fields as a tackle, like the responsibilities of it. And he gave me some interesting insight.
I was at the Nike Elite 11 finals. I was one of the offensive line coaches his senior year when it was him and Trevor Laurence. And for that tournament, I watched Justin put on a freaking show the last day in the championship rounds when he was the number one player in the country throwing the football. So I've definitely seen him be an accurate passer. I watched it here in high school, watched it in college. So just knowing he's a guy back there that I can hold my block. And if he gets some time, he's going to do that. He's going to throw a good football. But at the same time, when the rush gets going, he's not going to be a pocket guy to where as a lineman, I know he'll be able to escape some sacks. And I won't get called for sacks as much because he's going to escape some. But the main thing for a quarterback first is to protection. You know what I mean? I think the Bears start doing that more, protecting Justin. I think the fans will see a lot more great football out of the young kid.
We forget about Justin the passer because of what he was as a runner in the NFL. And I don't know if there's a real comp for that, where it's a guy that coming in was kind of known to be a pocket passer in college. When we were talking about Justin Fields' athleticism, even though he had the great 40 time, all the tape in high school and college was him carving defenses up through the air. Seeing him do it at run the ball at a historic level is shocking and surprising. So my hope is that there is balance, like the force gets balanced in the next couple of seasons with Justin Fields, where we are seeing him get back to that. But it goes back to what Willie was talking about. You've got to have the protection. And more than having it, he's got to trust it. Justin has to trust that guys are going to be able to hold their blocks. They're not getting bull rushed into his lap.
Yep. He's got to understand that this side's probably okay. Knowing the protection, knowing where everything's angled and who's got whom, he's got to innately be able to say, I'm not going to get sped up by somebody coming from over there.
Or there is a place for me to climb the ladder of the pocket. And I can trust that I don't have to peek over here.
Right. Or look back. Yeah.
Right. And I can step into this throw and step into the play and make a good read down the field and hopefully find DJ Moore or Darnell and make a play down the field. But it's so weird. I've been racking my brain. Is there anyone that you can think of that was like that, where their game was completely different from college to finding success in the NFL? Like a quarterback who was doing, like, I don't know if there's even a reverse. Maybe Steve Young at BYU, where there's maybe a little bit more run in his game in college, and then he finds the West Coast system and he's passing out of it.
Well, he changed it from the USFL to the NFL. That's where it really changed, because he was almost a running back in some respects as a USFL player. That's interesting to say who would be that successful doing something very, very different than they did in college.
And I don't mean position change. I don't mean like taking Brian Urlacher playing safety and then him playing linebacker in the pros.
It happens a lot in basketball, where you do get someone who's used by a college coach in basketball as like, you're a big man and go stand there. And then the NBA, they're like, no, run around and shoot it. Like, so there's that you see. You see less of it now than you used to. It used to happen all the time.
Yeah, where the stretch five started to be born.
Right.
when you go, oh, that's a back to the basket guy in college. And then they get to the pros, it's like, no, I'm going to shoot threes.
Mm-hmm.
Like Nicholas Batum, like, oh, there he is. He's out there doing this. Or not that it's that different, but Paolo, when you're looking at his college game, you're going, this is how Duke used him, and this is how he's going to be used in the NBA. I don't know if there's a football comp for what Justin Fields has done.
That's a good question. It's for that kind of professional adaptation, and not just a one-off, or not just
right, not one game where he goes off.
And ideally, or even one season, ideally, Fields. I mean, we had the spectacular. He was like Gale Sayers last year.
Yes,
he was like Devin Hester, and you don't want him to have to be. It was great, but if things work out, there will be a time and a place for that.
Right, and what we were talking about when we were talking with Sean King is because that's on tape now, because of the things that we know that Fields can do athletically, him running out of pass looks is a more effective weapon than called runs for him, because the defense is going to ideally have their back to him, that they're going to be trailing on DJ Moore and Darnell Mooney and Chase Claypool, hopefully. And it takes more eyes off of the quarterback, which should make him an effective runner if he needs to run.
Something else in the back of my head, just talking about the scouting of Paris Johnston too, is what the Bears see in Braxton Jones that maybe is in that same category of intangible makeup, dedication, work ethic, the kind of thing where maybe they see the potential for one of these mainstay stalwart career tackles. The physical's got to catch up with the mental, because from what they have said about it, and the fact that as a rookie, he took every snap.
Yeah,
that is not a small thing.
No, it's not.
We can quibble with his strength and his lower body, his anchor and re-anchoring and all that stuff we want to use in all our buzzwords, but that reliability, maybe if he develops some of that first and they can get everything else up to a workable level, maybe he doesn't stay at left tackle, but that's good scouting. And maybe you just got like what Jed Hoyer was calling the runway for prospect development because you were bad. And you were able to say, look, let's just put him out there. And he responded, and he was there every single game, every single snap.
Someone offered up an interesting comp, but I want to go look at some of the statistics on it a little deeper. Darren Sproles, where Sproles was a workhorse running back and a punt returner. It was like one of my favorite players of all time in college football, by the way. And then when he got to the NFL, you're like, well, we can swing him out on passes. And I think he did like 5,000 receiving yards or whatever in the league. And that's not bad. That's not, and again, I'm not talking about position changes. I'm not talking about, we think this guy is this, we're going to turn him into this. It's like actively doing different stuff with a player that wasn't on tape. Darren Sproles was not. That's a good idea and an offer there, Texter. Let me keep racking my brain on this.
Want to get back to baseball when we return?